I was once seated at a table at an event with identical twin sisters. One of them, who was dressed very sophisticatedly, had gotten married 52 years before. And her identical twin sister, wearing a veil, became a nun 52 years before. They were telling me stories about what it was like to be twins, having such different states of life. And the one who was married said, "My own sister couldn't come to my own wedding." To which the nun smiled, because of course she was in the novitiate. There wasn't a chance she was going to be given permission to do anything. I found out that the one sister had lived in community throughout all of those 52 years, and the other lived in the Marina district of San Francisco, one of the nicest places anyone could ever live. Now, in earlier times, we would have said that the nun was living a holy life and her sister was living a secular life. But we've come a long way since then in our understanding of holiness. Holiness has nothing to do with what state of life we're in. Our holiness is determined by one thing: how much we resemble Christ, how much our life looks like Christ's life. And that was the trouble with James and John in the gospel today. They are apostles, and they're inner circle apostles. These guys are very in. In fact, if you were going to try to compare them to someone today, they're almost living a life like a nun would be. Their job is to follow Jesus full time. They gave their other job up. They go where he goes. They do what he does. But we hear in the story today, they don't resemble him. He says to them, "Wait a minute. Are you asking to sit in a place of honor? Are you looking to be served? Because I didn't come here to be served, and I thought you were following me. Are you following me and seeking to be served? I came here to serve." They were part of Jesus' crowd, but they weren't resembling him. And the same thing happens to us today, because Jesus stood out from the crowd. He didn't value the things that other people valued. He didn't live the way a lot of other people lived. That's why the Romans took notice of him. That's why the Jewish authorities noticed him. It wasn't because he went there demanding to be seen. No, they found him because he stood out as not acting like other people. But a lot of us, if we're honest, maybe don't stand out. We look like any other citizen, any other person living in a neighborhood. The idea of coming to Mass every week and experiencing the same sacrament over and over again has a purpose. Have you ever wondered why we don't have themes like, oh, it's the third Sunday of the month, so we'll do this Sunday, and then next Sunday we'll do something different? No, we always do the same thing. It's always the Eucharist. And that's because the goal is that by receiving Jesus' body and blood, and by imbibing his soul and his divinity, we're going to become, over time, more and more and more like him. It's like they say in the diet world, you are what you eat. That's how it's supposed to work. That's why we're eating Christ, so that we will bring his values in. And you know, for some people, that's exactly what happens. Over time, after receiving the Eucharist again and again, over a long period of time, we grow in our faith and become more and more like Christ. But it would be honest to also admit that for some of us, coming and receiving the Eucharist is what we do instead of growing. It's almost like somehow along the way we started thinking it was a merit badge that we could earn. You know, like sacraments are merit badges. Or maybe for others of us, it's more like an alibi. so that if God tries to pin something on us, we'll be like, oh, no. I was at Mass. Can't pin that on me. But of course, that's not the purpose. The purpose is to be, over time, growing in our resemblance to Christ. Every year I go on retreat, and a few years ago I went to a monastery in the Catskills with cloistered nuns. And it's a completely silent experience. You even take your meals into the little hermitage that you're living in, and you eat on your own. But if you wish, you can send a note to the sisters and ask if they could speak with you for some counsel. And I did that, and I got Sister Lux Bruna was the one who talked with me, and she was great. She had a lot of really helpful things to say. And in the conversation I said, Sister, how long have you been living this life? And she said, oh, I don't live this life. I'm only trying to live it. And I said, how long have you been trying to live it? And she said, 22 years. To come to Mass and to attend church, to be part of the community, that's like putting our hand on the doorknob and opening the door of spiritual growth. It's meant to be the first step. But for a lot of us, we think that that's the whole journey. But it's only opening the door. And I think that maybe James and John felt that too. They were like, okay, we're here, we're in. And they heard Jesus talking about this being a path to glory. And we hear that too. We say, oh, this is a path that leads to glory. We like the sound of that. But there's a lot of station stops on the way. And all of them involve serving. We're supposed to follow him not just to glory, but through all of the ways that he used his life to make the world better. So becoming more like Christ means that we're going to be living differently than our neighbors are, likely. We're going to be living a different kind of life. We're going to have different values. We're going to have to override a lot of our instincts. We're going to have to tune out a lot of the programming that our culture gives us. A lot of the messages from society we're going to have to tune out of, because we're called to be peacemakers like he was. We're called to be meek and humble. We're called to be poor in spirit. So if you think about what that means on a practical level, do you think Christ, if he were here now, would be talking about politics all day long? Do you think he'd be watching those news channels where they just give you breaking news on politics all day long, and then waiting like a piece of flypaper for somebody to come by? Did you hear what they're doing now? Right? Is that what Christ would be doing? Would he be the kind of person people would avoid because don't get him talking about politics? We know that he wouldn't. That's not how he would be. He wouldn't be watching one of those news channels all day. He wouldn't even be interested in the political debate, because he would be in the community seeing what needs to be done right here and right now. He'd be wanting to see what people are in need. Who's the underdog in our community that needs help? If Jesus went to brunch after Mass and the service wasn't good, would he want to speak with a manager and say, I want her fired? I mean, I came here for good service. What is this? Does that sound like anything he would do? Would he ever try to get someone fired because I came here to be served? No, he said the exact opposite. So if we want to be his followers, if we want to resemble him, there's going to be a lot of things that other people think is completely acceptable that is not going to work for us, because it's not the way he lived. The great poet and author Maya Angelou was once talking with a neighbor of hers, and they got to the topic of religion, and the neighbor said, well, I'm a Christian. And Maya said, you are? Already? I'm still working at it.